Got it. So there we go. I would like to start by a little brainstorming and ask you what or why is quality of education a major angle of analysis? In your opinion, what do you think? You're free to please raise your hand and share your thoughts. Why do you think quality is a major angle of analysis? Sorry, I cannot see your hands. Amaranta, can you see the hands up?
Yes, and I think Priyanti has just raised her hand.
Okay.
Yes, I think because of its important, it has been introduced as a SDG goal of raising the quality when in 2030. It is because of the importance it bears. It is included.
Okay, that's a very good reason. Thank you. Thank you for that, Priyanti. Anybody else?
Michael has raised his hand. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, thank you very much. I also believe that, of course, SDG 4 is very emphatic about that. It is an expectation in almost every country. Citizens have that expectation that education must be of the highest quality. It is an indicator for many of our assessment related engagements. So for all these and many other reasons, it is important.
Okay, I agree. Yes, thank you very much, Michael. Good.
George has his hand raised as well. Go ahead, George.
Yes, thank you so much. I think quality is the utmost advantage that we can get from our education. You cannot talk about access which is devoid of quality. You cannot even talk about equity if quality is not there. Actually, for me, I think that quality is the essence of having an education system, and an education system that enables people to contribute to the development of their society through skills and knowledge that they acquire in the education system. And quality education is one of the basic service that, or the basic thing that we can derive from any education system. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, George. Good. Those are very relevant points that you are raising. Let me see. As you've just as you have just pointed out, yes, there are international commitments. And one of those is, of course, it's Education Post 2015. I would like to say that when we talk about quality, of course, it's about ensuring equitable and inclusive quality and lifelong learning. But I think that one of the difficulties when talking about quality probably is that most people understand intuitively what they personally mean when they refer to this concept of quality, of course, but there may not be a common understanding for everybody. I can see that in my experience, quality is a very controversial concept. There were some years ago, there were hot debates in UNESCO on how to define quality, and experts and researchers and planners would not agree on one single definition. So I think that this is a concept that is still evolving, and it depends on conventional definitions that, of course, include literacy and numeracy skills and life skills, and these are connected to other components that are critical in education system, like the teachers, the contents, methodologies, curriculum, examinations, policies. But at the same time, I think it's important to say that there is a demand to reflect the relevance of all this, and also I think that education is mainly expected to make a contribution to sustainable human development, peace, and security, and also to inform decision makers on what is the path to take. And all these concepts are interconnected one to one another. So, for example, there are some arguments about quality, that there is a strong link between good education and a wide range of social and economic benefits for the individual. We can see that in the period of general decline or the Great Recession that took place between 2007 and 2009, it was found that no social group or country is totally immune from the impact of a major economic slowdown. That was very clear, no matter how high its level of education. But this experience has also shown that even in times of economic crisis, high skills levels offer some of the best protection for both the economies of countries and individuals. And at the most basic level, it is clear that having a higher level of education helps people to keep or change their jobs during the recession. And for instance, there was an example that between 2008 and 2010, the early years of the downturn, it was found that overall the unemployment rates in many countries jumped from an already high 8% to 12% for people without an upper secondary education. And by contrast, it was also found that unemployment rates for people with higher education remained well below 5%. So there is clearly a strong link between education and economic benefits. Now, there are other arguments for giving significant room to quality aspects, like not only for the individual, but also for the nation's economic potential. And here we make reference to a publication published by Eric Hanushek and Ledger Wapman, where they show that indeed the quality of education, rather than simple access to education, is what impacts the economic growth of a country. What do we mean by this? Well, these researchers actually found that data on economic growth and student cognitive skills could shift the dialogue to education quality and have a real impact on the economy of a nation. So in concrete terms, today there is a strong evidence that cognitive skills of the population, rather than mere or simple school attainment, are powerfully related to individual earnings, to the distribution of income, and to national economic growth. And there are other empirical results that show the importance of of both the minimal and the high skills levels. We're going to talk about this later on. And the robustness of the relationship between skills, people skills, and growth. Now, there are a number of operational definitions of what quality of education means. To some people, this is about creativity or literacy and numeracy skills, civic behavior. I think quality of education would include a wide range of characteristics. This goes from learners who are healthy, well-nourished, ready to participate and learn, to healthy, safe, and gender-sensitive environments with adequate resources and facilities. Quality is also understood as relevant curricula and materials for basic skills in literacy, numeracy, life skills, and relevant knowledge in very important matters such as HIV and AIDS prevention and gender equity, peace, and nutrition. Quality also means processes through which trained teachers use child-centered approaches in well-managed classrooms. And quality is also outcomes that take into account the knowledge, the skills, the attitudes, positive participation in society. And all these are linked to national goals for education. So you can see that quality includes a wide range of concepts and aspects of the education system. Now, how and through what criteria would you define, and this is tricky, how would you define and assess the quality of primary education in your country? You will see we have a Mentimeter survey, so you are invited to go to this one. I let Amaranta guide us through it.
Thank you, Laura. Yes, if you can stop sharing your presentation, and then I will start sharing my screen. You have the instructions on the chat, so you can go to menti.com and use the code 9125091, or I will also share with you, so I hope you all see my presentation now. I will share with you the QR code if you want to scan it on your phone. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to go to either menti.com and enter the code 9125091, or if you are on your mobile, you can scan the QR code that is on the screen. So I'll give you a minute to access. Okay. Okay, otherwise you have all the instructions on the chat. So I'm going to close these instructions and I will go directly to this first question. And we can see that you have already entered some interesting answers here. One person has replied already. Let's wait for a couple of minutes more to see if more people can reply to this important question. Don't forget, you have the instructions on the chat. You go to menti.com and use the code 9125091. Okay. Perfect. More answers are here. 2 people have replied. Perfect. 3 people. Let's see, we can have a little bit more. Okay. Starting looking very beautiful over there with all these colors. Laura, I give you the floor if you want to comment on the replies.
Sure. Thank you, Amaranta. Well, I can see that for some colleagues, you would define and assess the quality of primary education in your country as available resources, student performance, effective pedagogy, numeracy, IQ, global standards, teacher quality, child-centered learning, I suppose, and okay, link with access and equity. Oh, that's a very good point again. I can see it emerges, equity and quality and access, they go together. Yeah, I agree with that. Enrollment, curriculum. Yeah, that's great. Very good. We are on the same page.
Okay,
Great.
perfect. So
Thank
if you
you.
agree, Laura, I'll stop sharing and then we can go back to your presentation.
Okay.
Oh, we still have more replies if you wanna read them.
More replies.
Another person just replied, but
Learning, conduct learning environment links with access and equity. I can see developing. I already spoke of effective pedagogy, available resources, global standards. Yes, numeracy, average. Okay, yes, that's great. Let's see what comes next. And we will see the coincidences. Yes.
perfect. I'll stop sharing my screen and we can go back to your presentation, Laura. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Okay, there we go. So as we can see, there is no single definition, and yes, of this concept of quality, there might be many definitions. Yes, it is important to think of quality in terms of how societies define the purpose of education. That's a very important point. I can share with you some experience, professional experience I had when working on this issue of quality of education in a cross-national study of the quality of education, where I found that, well, as I told you before, the quality was a very controversial question or concept. In our understanding at that time, quality could be considered as anything that could be measured. So quality, for example, would mean measuring, when somebody said measuring the impact of peace education was something very difficult to address through an international survey. Peace education, what do we mean by that? But when we think of school violence, for example, or we think of gender disparities that are implied, that the conceptualization of very concrete behaviors and attitudes. And those behaviors and attitudes, or the frequency in which those behaviors and attitudes took place, was something that could be measured and also could be compared at different points in time. And this would allow us to measure the effectiveness of education policies and the progress or not of specific school issues. So in my experience, I would like to say that quality is anything that can be measured. It's anything that can be compared over time. It's anything that can be explicitly described and tested or measured. Now, there are some guiding principles when defining quality. Of course, as you pointed out in the Mentimeter, it's about promoting cognitive development of learners. Yes, it's also about developing social behavior and attitudes, I would add, according to agreed norms and values. That, of course, that depends on the context of in a given country or education system. And as George and Michael pointed out during the first exchange that we have today, there is a very strong linkage between quality and equity. I don't know if you remember in module 3, we could see that equity is observed through the, I would say, the existence of disparities or inequalities, right? Therefore, without equity, if there are many disparities in the education system, we cannot talk about a good quality of education. In an education sector diagnosis, there are 2 types of analysis that are normally suggested to establish the extent to which an education system is either equitable or inequitable. So the first type of analysis deals with the inequalities in access to school, inequalities in schooling paths and learning achievements. This type of analysis will establish the extent to which access, retention, and learning are related to individual characteristics. Then we have a second type of analysis that deals with inequalities, and this has to do with the distribution of education resources. So this analysis will observe whether the distribution of resources favors or not equity, that is, whether the distribution of resources compensates the inequalities that exist among different groups of students at birth, or whether these measures or this type of these inequalities are reinforcing the fact that there are disparities within a given population. Now, measuring the output of education processes, yes, we will see that we can examine in more detail 3 main dimensions, I would say, that are usually analyzed in a sector or subsector diagnosis. And we have the output characteristics, the input characteristics, and the teaching learning processes. So now we'll start with the output characteristics. And we will see that most output indicators include measures such as pass rates at national examinations or average scores obtained by students in different subjects that are taken at national examinations or international studies. So this is one aspect. And then, of course, we have the pupil student achievement assessments and their use for quality, education quality in an ESD. I hope you still remember what we saw in module 3, that we discussed in, I think it was in unit 6, that there are 4 types of learning assessments that are used as proxy measures of education quality. And we could see that there are national examinations and tests, there are national assessments, and also international standardized assessments and household surveys. Now, I would like to yes, this is very interesting, because all these different types of assessments have some points in common and some differences that could be more or less useful for an ESD. For example, in the case of national assessments and tests, we know that these are they have a comprehensive coverage, and are assessments administered nationally. And the thing is that these are used to make high stakes decisions, such as high school completion or college entrance. These are measured in terms of success rates, and these assessments, what is good about it is that these are longitudinal. This means that these enable comparisons over time. They usually reflect curricular content and are available for all education levels, but since they are national assessments that are very focused on a given country, these assessments do not allow for international comparisons. And also the data are available at, not always, the data is not available at the student level. It's an overall it's over results. Then we discussed the national assessments that are that enable assessment of learning outcomes at any level or grade. And the only thing is that education curricula and content vary across countries, and international comparisons, like in the national examinations, are not possible. But the scope of his exams is quite large, and that could be a very relevant piece of information. As we mentioned before, we have the international standardized assessments, such as the ones mentioned on the slide, SACMEC and PASEC, TIMSS, PISA, and PEARLS. And these assessments measure results in terms of assessment scores, and of course they allow international comparisons. However, the problem is that they are administered irregularly, and only they partially reflect curricular content. Then we also discussed about the household surveys that give a very important information about demographic aspects and provide data on education achievement. They cover either samples of a comprehensive population. I mean, it's either samples that are already calculated, or in some cases, they can also include larger populations. They are basic sources of information because they make little comparative sense internationally. Now, you may ask yourself, what is the relevance of this of an ESD? Well, sometimes it's good to see what's going on in a neighboring country, what policies work and do not work, and have some evidence and get some inspiration from countries that go through a similar education process. But again, this is a combination of information and factors that can be applied. Now, according to this, different aspects of assessments, what do you think are the advantages and limitations of using national or international assessment results in an ESD? Applied to an ESD more concretely, what are your thoughts about this? Is there any hand up?
Yes, Priyanti has raised her hand.
Yes, there are advantages and limitations. First, I would tell about an advantage. If we use international assessment, we can find whether our students of our country is par with those other countries. we can gain if their achievement level matches with the international level, global level, we can assess that. But if there are limitations, because sometimes most of those international assessments can be accessed to only minimum number of students. The majority of students may not have certain access, or they may not be qualified to attend those things. So the one advantage and one limitation is there. And when we think about national assessments, we can measure how our students are according to our context, our quality of our education, because most countries, their general education system, they have a uniformity, so we can assess what we should do or what we should not do. There are also this limitation occurs because due to the quality of education, normally in our countries, some schools or some students, normally urban schools, they have more good teachers, or the curriculum is rich, they have more provisions, rather than when we compare in the rural sectors, where sometimes for basic subjects they don't have qualified or even no teachers to teach those subjects. So there are certain limitations and all those things, but I think as general, the assessments, they support and they prepare children for what comes ahead and what would they face in national examinations. Thank you.
That's interesting, Priyanti. Thanks for sharing. George, what do you think? I can see your hand up now. George?
Yes, thank you so much. I think Priyanka has brought out all the aspects, because when you look at the advantages of using this assessment at the national level, you can easily get data, and this data can easily be interpreted, and you are using the local people to do to gather the data. But also the problem there is that sometimes the expertise in getting this data and then analyzing it and then applying it may be lacking. The other issue that I can talk about the international assessment is that you can be able to make a comparison, because if your assessment cannot compare with other countries and what they are doing, you may not be able to learn much from what other countries are doing. And basically what we are doing, especially in these developing countries, we are trying to look at what other people are doing and what works for them. For example, if there is a developing country and they have a good practice, this is what we are doing. So it needs really this kind of assessment, so that we are able to compare and then also see what is good for us, or see what the gaps are, so that we may cover these gaps. Thank you.
Thank you, George. I can see Agustin, your hand up.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Just to make a note on the regional assessments, and maybe in between of the national and international, and in our case, which is the ones that we use and promote, which is the PILNA, the Pacific Island Numeracy and Literacy Assessment. And basically, in terms of advantages, what I can mention is to establish a benchmarking point and a way to test and measure the national assessment system based on the regional comparability. This happens every 3 years. In terms of one of the advantages, and you mentioned earlier the availability of student data or specific student data. But do this even if the information is not in the report or the general report that we produce for all the public, but we give to each of the countries is a database with all the data, and they have the possibility to dig deeper in all the data mentioned, the results of the assessment, but also links with elements like the contextual questionnaire, and they can go even far beyond the elements expressed in the reports. They can, each of the countries that participate in the PILNA, they can research or give more information from the data that we provide to them. In terms of disadvantages, well, disadvantages or elements to consider, yes, is the sampling process. For some really small countries that we address all the students in the countries. For bigger countries, obviously, we provide a sampling, and as a sampling is always a group of students that we can do with different. And so one key aspect. In some ways also we agree with the country the type of the extended sampling that they can decide. So there is a minimum sampling, but they can oversampling, or they can extend their sampling in the way that that they want. So in theory, we can address all the schools that they want to sampling, or all the reference or typologies of schools that that each of the country want to address. But there is always this intention that in really big countries we're not able to reach each and every student. And finally, my last point, not disadvantage, but also a comment, is that the assessments or the report are as well or as good or as productive as the measures or the policies that the countries or the recipients of this information decide to put in place. So this is like my final comment. So the whole point of this assessment is to have informed policy decision or action points generated by this report. So meaning that one of our quality measures is the results that this produce, but also the decisions that are taken based on those results.
Yes, that's a very, very important point. Agustin, I agree with you. Thanks for sharing. I'm coming back to this in a moment. I would like also to say that of course, whenever we talk about, you spoke about samples and tests for all the individuals or the students' populations. Of course, this implies a cost, and there are other implications in the conduct of large-scale assessments. I'm coming back to this. But now, what I would like to talk about and discuss with you is actually what are the type of data, what pupil-student assessment data can tell us in an ESD? What is relevant from all that? What should we be looking at? Well, again, I would like to share my experience. I worked many years in a regional cross-study, cross-national study of the quality of education that's called SACMEC. And in this SACMEC regional study, I can say that the main purpose of this study was to gather information that could be used as Agustin was pointing out, by ministries of education to inform policies, but also in the case of SACMEC was to track the trends in the general conditions of schooling, of levels of grade 6 pupils, and also the trends of a mathematics achievement and reading of grade 6 teachers as well. And in this particular study, it was also important to track the trends of the knowledge that pupils and their teachers had about HIV and AIDS, for example. So the SACMED project provided, of course, there were no easy answers to most of the questions, but it would suggest the reasons why the quality of education was improved or not, and or was remaining or would still remain the same or would deteriorate in other countries. It would give some suggestions on what is going on. For example, we know that grade repetition was a big issue that was shared in many SACMED countries. But it was also known that many decisions about grade repetition can be faulty in the sense that they are often based on arbitrary school level perceptions and not based on a more global view of this situation. So that is, I think that is the beauty of the learning assessments when they cover a whole country or a region, is that we can ask questions and that go beyond the fact of the league tables, you know, in terms of who's doing better in what subject. In the case of SACMED, for example, I remember that there were questions related to equity issues. For example, what progress was made towards gender equality in achievement, or also have pupils being given the textbook they need to use at their school, or what are the challenges that paid tuition suggested in the context of equity and quality education. Of course, there were other issues related to HIV and AIDS and how effective the prevention education programs were, and to what extent that was there was a prevalence rate of the pandemic in that area in sub-Saharan Africa. So what is interesting about these learning assessments is when we have the opportunity to look at the questionnaires and see actually what is being measured and what are the aspects of quality of education system that are being taken into consideration. So let's see what pupil-student assessment can tell us. International tests, well, of course, they can tell us about students' achievement and compare with those of other countries as regards different cognitive skills. And it can also show some signals that need a critical review of a country's policy measures. It's like the red light showing that something is going on that should be taken into consideration or should be looked at in more detail. Those studies can point at important issues concerning quality and equity. Now, what are the things that pupil-student data assessment data cannot tell us? Well, I would say that, of course, for those tests that have not been conducted on cognitive skills, of course, there is no information on those aspects. Then we have practical and social emotional skills. I'm not sure. I think it depends on the study, and I would say that in the case of values and attitudes and behavior, I can say that it can be one limitation in certain studies. In other studies, such as the one of SACMEC, for example, I remember that grade 6 pupils were asked about the attitudes, for example, towards a person that was infected with HIV. And there were questions like, how would you behave towards a close friend of yours who has told you that he or she was infected with HIV? Or another question would you be willing to care for a relative who became ill with HIV? I think those are aspects that that can be measured, and information is available. It depends on the study, of course. On the other hand, in this same study, I remember that school heads were asked about specific behaviors that could be observed in pupils or teachers, and these behaviors had to do with arriving late, for example, or intimidation, or bullying, or sexual harassment, or fights, or verbal abuse. So those are aspects that that could be used in the analysis of a sector diagnosis. Now, analyzing factors influencing learning. ESD may give particular attention to those factors with high impact on learning and its outcomes. Let me see. I would like to hear your thoughts a little bit about what you think, if there is a direct relationship between investment in education and the quality of education. I would say, Amaranta, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Laura. Okay, I will start sharing my screen. I hope you can all see my screen. You have the instructions on the chat on how to access to Mentimeter. Go to menti.com and use the code 9125091. And here you have the question: is there a direct relationship between investment in education and its quality? Yes or no? One person has replied. Let's give the others a few minutes. Okay, 5 people have said yes for the moment. Let's see if we can have a little bit more people. Okay, 6 people have said yes. Okay. Okay, Laura, so the most common answer has been said yes. Yes, I give you the floor if you want to comment on that.
Thank you, Maranta. I can see that 7 colleagues participated and 86% agrees on the idea that there is a direct relationship between investment in education and the quality of education. Okay, so let me see. Yes, it is true that financial investment can make a difference. I think that is what Agustin was pointing out in the chat to a certain extent, because there is no straightforward and simple relationship between investment in education and the quality. Now, there was a study that was published some time ago called "How the World's Most Improved School Systems Keep Getting Better." This is a report that examined 20 systems of education, and this report makes very interesting contribution in this aspect, because it was observed that a lack of sustained progress in many school systems was observed. I mean, they could see that there was a lack of sustained progress, although there were massive investments. And that's something that we can see, for example, in this grid, in these OECD countries, where we can see increase in spending per pupil from 1970 to 1994. And we can see an increase, yes, but can we see a change in math and science scores that is really significant? It's really important. In some cases, like in France or Germany and Japan, it doesn't seem to be the case, right? Seems to be the opposite. And I think this seems to suggest that, I mean, it is not one aspect concerning investment. It's one of many aspects that can influence the quality of education, but it's not necessarily the only one. And let me see. There is also another study that is elaborating more on this idea, and you will find it in the suggested readings or recommended readings on the platform. This is McKinsey's study on how the world's improved school systems keep getting better. You will see it there. This is the same study that that found that systems can improve outcomes substantially in a short time span, but of course the set of interventions should be tailored to the specific context. What do we mean by this? That yeah, we can observe other systems of education and learn from them in terms of the policies or the measures. But at the same time, it's important to keep the focus on the context on which these interventions are taking place. And it's not one size fits all. It's very important to keep the focus on the place, on the country, on the system, the particularities of that country. And another interesting finding in this study is that they tried to see whether there was a common intervention or pattern that would be used to improve school performance. So they asked the leaders of different systems of different countries, and then, I mean, ministry people, to do a chronicle of all the main interventions they undertook, and then they categorized that in 10 broad areas, like, for example, professional development or accountability or learning models. And then they disaggregated those into different sub-areas. And they found that, for example, in the case of accountability, they found that this is an area that includes sub-areas that they can categorize interventions according to whether it has an impact of change of structure, if it's a process, and which agent, that is the principal, the teacher, the student, parent, acted upon that intervention. And then they undertook a series of analyses regarding that intervention and realized that improving student achievement is not one single intervention. They call that a system thing. There's a number of aspects and things that have influence or have an impact on student achievement. And I think this is a key point for further reflection to be considered in an ESD when we do the system analysis. It's improving student achievement is a system thing. It's not one single measure. I suggest that you have a look at this report because it shows some very interesting data, and they explain in a very nice way the study itself and how the researchers undertook this important analysis. Now, we've had seen that quality dimensions to be studied in an ESD, and we could see the outputs, the direct learning inputs, learner characteristics, and so on. Now, I don't know if we have enough time. Perhaps we will see this later on. I would like to jump into the relevant dimensions and indicators for quality analysis. One is inputs, direct learning inputs. And what do we mean by that? Well, it's mainly material resources like school buildings, classrooms, textbooks, human resources, of course, teachers, inspectors, advisors, administrators. And then we have the learner characteristics. Typically, we talk about gender, socioeconomic background. And here we talk about lower or higher, urban, rural, health, including students' disabilities or cultural and religious background, the place of residence, the amount and nature of parallel or prior learning, like private tuition or supplementary tutoring. And of course, we have a teaching learning processes that is another relevant dimension. This aspect takes into account the student time spent on learning, time on tasks, and including absenteeism of students. We have the assessment methods for monitoring student progress. We can include there the frequency of homework giving and that is corrected, the styles of teaching, if there are teacher-student interaction or the different learning practices, the language of instruction. Does the curriculum reflect cultural bias of any kind, such as language, for example? How is that reflected? Then also we have classroom organization and management. We mean when quantitative data do not provide adequate insight of actual teaching practices, techniques of qualitative analysis can be employed. So, for example, observations of the classrooms or interviews with parents or students and teachers, discussions, analysis of school inspector reports. So what I mean by this is that an ESD requires not only quantitative data, but also qualitative methods where information can be interpreted in a certain context. Again, now here, of course, the context, that is the general learning context. This is very important. You will see in the assignments, in the individual assignments, we are always referring to a specific context. For example, in the case on Vinderland, this is something that pops up all the time, like issues relating to norms and objectives, related to national educational policy, poverty, values and norms, regulating society, rights and laws, and actual enforcement. And yes, and there are instruments or sources of information that can be used to undertake educational quality analysis in an ESD. So we have seen that educational quality consists of multiple dimensions that relate to cognitive and behavior aspects. That is the first column, the learner characteristics, the context, learning inputs, teaching and learning processes. Now, there are different instruments. Here you can see on the grid that, or sources of information that can be used to observe these dimensions. So there are tests and exams and inspection reports can provide information about cognitive and behavioral aspects. There are statistics and surveys that are good, very good instruments to observe learning characteristics. And then, as I said before, when quantitative data do not provide adequate insight, well, we can make use of techniques of qualitative analysis that include classroom observation, interviews, and so on. Also, we can see on the slide that when analyzing context, learning inputs or teaching, learning processes, these are aspects where educational planners can combine multiple methods, right? So, and there we have a good mix of not only statistics, but also observational studies and inspection reports. Okay, so existing analysis versus generating new information. There is a cost in time, money required to generate new or original information. And what is the expected benefit of that? Well, this is a very important issue. I think that is something that educational planners, administrative education, and practitioners ask themselves all the time. There are all sorts of information. Do we really need to undertake more? What are the gaps? What are the costs? Well, these are implications to be considered at probably at a national level if we're talking about the entire education system. More than just taking stock, for the preparation of a new education sector strategy and plan, education quality analysis must go beyond the recording of current achievements. And these analysis must also consider the conditions, if those conditions are for improvement are necessary. So it's just like striking a balance between the need for more information and the use of that information. Okay, what are the main conditions for education quality improvement in your country? What do you think? Would you like to share on that? We have a couple of minutes. Can I see you? No.
Okay, Cassie raised his hand, yes.
Okay, so Laura, you told that, like you said, quality is a more system change, yes?
Yeah.
So I think it's not easy. So if you want to improve the quality, we really need to transform the system. And it really, it takes time. So from based on my country, so we are in a loophole, quality improvement loophole. So all the systems or the components are working well. So we are in a quality challenge for the last 50 years. That's it. That's comment from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Cassie. Priyanti, I can see your hand up.
Yes, in my country, now we are in a crisis, and therefore we need to now our quality education need to be changed, because now we should move on to another context, and now we are trying to engage in other things that earlier we didn't dwell on. So the quality education at the time that, as you told us today, it changes. So we have to improve the quality of teachers and the curriculum, and based on those things we have to revive the education. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Priyanti. George, I can see your hand. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. I think the conditions for education quality, if we want to improve education quality in our countries, for example, in Uganda here, we need to look at the inputs. For example, the teachers. We need to have qualified teachers who have the basic knowledge in pedagogy, who can be able to deliver the knowledge and skills to the learners. Then we all need also to look at the content. You know, we have a challenge with our curriculum. Our curriculum should be able to address the society change, the society challenges. So content is very important. We also need to look at the learning environment. It must be conducive enough to motivate learning. For example, the girls, because we cannot talk about quality without the aspect of equity. So if we want to achieve quality, we need a conducive environment that is inclusive, and it encourages all the learners to be in the school, but also the financial muscle. Do we have the resources that require quality? Because you cannot, if you want to do something good, you must have the resources to do so. Here, for example, in Uganda, we were giving 47,000 shillings. That is about $20 or $30 to a child who is going to secondary. But now you can imagine how much can this do. So I think for me, the issue of financial capability is important, so that this money can be used to buy the scholastic materials, to build better buildings, to look at the remuneration of the teachers here. I think here the teachers are poorly paid. Recently, when they brought up the issue of the science teachers and they wanted to increase, the rest of the teachers are saying, but why the teachers? Also the policies. The policies must be inclusive. If we bring discriminative policies in our education system, like we are doing here in Uganda, saying that now we are going to pay science teachers differently and the arts teachers are different, such policies will not lead to quality of our education system. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, George. Yes, I can see that you are considering many different aspects in your thinking, and that is very, very interesting and very relevant. I could see at the very beginning in the Mentimeter, when we asked what do we mean by quality, the most of the factors were concentrated on skills, on behaviors, and IQ and numeracy and literacy. Now I can see that towards the end of the session in our exchanges, you have opened up your views to inclusive education, to investments, to this relationship between equity and quality, the different types of disparities that can be observed. That's very, very interesting. I'm very glad to hear all that because I can see that we are on the same page, and that's great. Yes, I can see, is there a new colleague who wants to share further thought? I can see Abena Kunadu.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Alberta. But this is Gloria Nyami. I'm having problems with my PC. Yes, I'm having challenges with the PC. So I have joined Alberta here, and I would want to contribute to the discussion. I'm thinking that a lot has been said, but then considering school management is also another condition I think can be very helpful when we are talking about education quality. School management, we are talking about how resources are managed. Do we use resources in their rightful ways, or how do we do it? Do we waste resources available to us? Do we use the resources for their intended purposes? All of them are very, very useful. How do we manage them? And then who also supervises who? Who ensures that someone does the right thing and someone is also responsible to a process in teaching and learning? Who also ensures that teachers teach very well according to the pedagogy and students also learn? All these things come into being in making education quality or ensuring education quality. So school management is also very, very paramount when we are talking about conditions for determining education quality. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gloria. That's great. I agree with you entirely. I think that's a very good. You have summarized very important points, and I'm very glad. And now I recognize you, Gloria. I know you. I didn't know Abina Kunadu, but I know Gloria. So it's great to have you. Good. Now, let me see. Yes, here we have another slide on something that Gloria was mentioning, the resources and the conditions. How do we know? Who makes sure that things are being monitored in the right way? So according to international comparative research, there are a critical review of curricula and standards. We have information on technical skills of teachers and principals, students' assessments, data systems. There are policy documents and laws promoting quality education. This has to do with governance and management. And there are implications for, in this regard, for the ESD. And these implications include going beyond the simple analysis of a situation with regard to quality issues, and give particular attention to general or the system thing, as we discussed in the McKinsey study, that is opposed to this single intervention and think more of a global or general system. And also it's important to highlight the context specific conditions for quality and improvement of quality in that particular system. And this involves evaluating existing policies and institutions, as Gloria was mentioning. And also it's, I think, in order to do that, quality should be defined in concrete terms by a criteria that can be measured, and as I said before, that can be observed over time. In that way, evidence can be used to confirm whether or not an education system have improved the quality and all the aspects that are considered in quality or not. So now we have reached the end of this presentation. If you have any thoughts or comments, you are very welcome to share. I can see George's hand. George. George, do you have a hand up?
No, I think I never lowered my hand after the other
Okay.
submission. Yeah,
All
but I
right.
definitely, I'll have something to say.
Yes, please.
No.
Over to you.
Yeah, I think this is very important if we are talking about the sector diagnosis, and we are looking at the issue of quality. For me, I think quality is everything. If we have an education system with so many learners in Uganda, in 1997, when we started universal secondary education, we had 2.4 million children at school. After 6 years, we in 27, we had 8.4 million children in UPE. But the issue of quality was a very big problem. Even up to today, we wanted so many children to go to school. But again, after we pushed them to school, the issue of quality, many of these children were coming out with nothing. Many of them could not read. If you look at our national assessment program, you would see that the reading, for example, the numeracy skills were very low. And now we are grappling with improving quality. Yet many of our children have gone through the system empty. I can say they are empty because there is no value in what they got. So looking at issues of quality and issues of investment, because a government that does not invest in education, actually it is investing in failure of the next generation. So this is very critical. The issue of managing the resources and also the issue of monitoring. Here we have a challenge. I work with the Ministry of Education, but recently the report was indicating that a school is visited once in 3 years. So what is happening down there? Because human nature needs to be pushed. That is the human mentality. If I'm not, if I know that at the end of this session, I will not be marked absent, then I don't find a reason for attending. But because there is that kind of monitoring, I am supposed to create time and attend. So if a teacher is working in the schools and there is no monitoring, if the head teacher is spending resources and is not monitored, it creates a lot of issues. So thank you so much for this very important aspect in our education diagnosis. I think quality to me is everything, and it is the focus of any education system. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, George. We have some minutes left, and before going on, I would like to do a little recap on the next steps and the steps so far that we have worked on so far. I don't know, probably Michaela, I don't know if you want to jump in at some point, or would you prefer that I start with the feedback on the previous session, the assignments?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Laura, first of all, for a very clear and exciting presentation. And I think everybody I have been listening to you, and I've seen also that our participants are very much concerned with the issue of quality, which I think is absolutely crucial. And I think you have made some very important points about the importance actually of looking at quality as a systems issue with many different factors that have to be taken into account when we diagnose and when we tackle quality. But I think we have also to realize that at some point in time, we have to identify some trigger elements to improve the quality. So there is a tension here of looking at quality as a systems issue where many things come together and play together. Yet at the same point in time, when we are going into the planning phase, we will have to say where we put our money. Do we want to develop our teachers? Do we want to perhaps improve our school supervision? So we still have to keep that, I think, on our minds to find out what are the most appropriate triggers actually to improve quality. And maybe that's a question that will stay with us in the next module. So this is just, you know, a thought, maybe to push it a little bit further and also to position ourselves where we are now. We are now at the, you know, thinking about how to diagnose quality. At some point in time, we will have to think how to improve quality. And that's, of course, the task of module 5. So then with this small input, I pass it again to Laura and to give a little bit of feedback on the, you know, to tackle the perspectives. And yeah, just great to be with you today. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Michaela. So before leaving, dear colleagues, I would like to give a little feedback on Unit 3, individual assignment. I have seen that 7 colleagues have submitted the assignment last Sunday. And you know that the rest of the colleagues who have not yet submitted, you are very welcome to do so by tomorrow, by Wednesday 1st. So please submit so that we can keep track of this. It is important that you can apply these concepts into a specific country case, you know, assignment, a specific assignment on this Vindoland case study. So we look forward to reading you all. So if you have any questions or have any issues, you know that you can reach out to us through the help forum or through the messages on the platform. So please, one thing is that I could see is that, as you know, for this assignment on Unit 3, you were asked to focus on one subsector that could be pre-primary or post-primary. So for the colleagues who have not yet submitted, please make sure that you do the analysis based on the subsector that you were assigned, so that we make sure that we are on the same page. I could see that some colleagues have answered each of the 4 questions or columns of the assignment and then provided a summary by completing the columns of the table on angle of analysis, the main selected problem, indicators illustrating the problem and the causes underlying the selected problem, and also the indicators or other information that illustrate those causes that explain those problems. That was overall, that was good. In terms of angles of analysis, it was also good to see that most of you elaborated on the disparities in access and participation levels compared to the capital region, for example. That was very good. There are a number of indicators and causes that explain the situation in terms of access. So please remember to put them explicitly in the table. And at the same time, there are other issues that the second part of the exercise around internal efficiency levels in both primary and post-primary. And I could see that most of the colleagues have identified those levels or those issues in a clear way and in a correct way. So I can say that overall, the work submitted so far seems to be on the good track. So I'd like to thank again the colleagues who submitted, and I would like to encourage those who have not yet submitted to do so by tomorrow at the latest. So again, if you have any questions or comments, just feel free to let us know. Okay. All right. I don't know, Michaela, if you would like to add something else. If not, I think if colleagues are not raising their hands, I can see.
No, I think it was very clearly said. I think we have a question from Priyanti.
Yes, I have put my question into the chat about the Unit 3 quiz. I have emailed also. I think you can answer me back, I think. There was a problem when I am attempting that. In Unit 3 quiz.
Unit 3 quiz.
Yes. I have sent an email to that.
Okay.
Yes.
Have you sent that message to me or
that tep@iiep.unesco.org.
Yes. Okay, I will check that. All
yes.
Right.
Because when I'm answering the question, I can't move on to the forum, so I just put an email to that email address.
Okay, no problem. I will check that and come back to you, Priyanti. Thanks for
thank you very much.
Thank you. Good. Anybody else? No. Okay. Gloria, I can see your hand up.
Yeah. I am through. I've been able to join. Yeah, please. I've also sent a message to you, email, but I've also not received the feedback through the very same address my colleague read to you.
Okay, you sent a message to my email, right? Is it TEP or is it my?
No, the one on our platform.
On the platform, okay.
Yes, the one on the learning platform.
Thank you, Gloria. I will check that right away and come back to you. Thanks for pointing it out.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. And Cassie, I can see your hand up. Please, the floor is yours. No? Yes.
Laura. Okay.
I think there has been a problem. Like my colleagues are saying, sometimes we want to address certain issues with, for example, the leaders of this module, but it becomes difficult to get your emails because sometimes even if you send it, it is bounced. So I don't know how we can get a better way of sending, because it is better to send questions or issues to you other than sending it on the general email. I don't know how best we can do that, but it has also challenged me.
Yes, that's very important point, George. Thank you. Thank you, because there are two ways. One is a help forum. The good thing about the help forum is that you can ask your question or share your comment, and all the colleagues can see it, and they will see the response that we give to that comment. So I encourage you to post your comments in the help forum. And Melina and I will be looking at those. We do that on a daily basis normally. Another way is to send us a message through the platform. I will read it, and that usually works well too. And another way, it's what Priyanti has done, which consists of sending a message to the TEP email account. And that is, yeah, we check that every 2 days or so, because that is the account for many other issues apart from the course on ESP. So those are the 3 ways of contacting and reaching out. And please forgive us if we take a little bit of time, but we normally come back to you in a day or 2. We are 2 people reading the messages and following up, especially Melina. So, and of course, don't hesitate to let us know. I will now check what Gloria and Priyanti have shared so far and the messages and come back to you. So you're very welcome to let us know when something needs clarification or you need help on something. Okay. Cassie, your hand is still up?
Is it possible to get a feedback of the paper? Is it possible to get the feedback of the paper?
Sorry, it's a bit cut. It cuts.
Is it possible to get the feedback of the assignments?
There is a feedback. Yes, there is a feedback. We are posting those. We are sharing the feedback. Yeah, very soon. The issue we had at the beginning was that few colleagues could submit, and we thought that it would be good to share the feedback case by case. So we will start doing that in the coming
thank you so much.
Today. Yes, thank you, Cassie. All right, everybody. I think it's time to go now. Thank you again.
Thank you
for coming and for sharing your thoughts and experiences. And I hope to see you again very soon. And don't hesitate to reach out to us. Okay, have a good week and take care. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.